Jack Harris, the longtime leader of KPRC Radio and Television, is one of the men being honored, along with the likes of Grant Tinker and Frank Stanton of CBS, Leonard Goldenson of ABC, and Mark Goodson, the man who invented the game show. Harris served on the staff of General MacArthur during the war, and he was responsible for the press coverage and the radio broadcast of the historic Japanese surrender aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. When the war was over, Jack Harris came to Houston and in 1947 became the manager of KPRC Radio. In 1949, he started running Channel 2. He was everything but the farm director here, he once boasted.
And it's this fine T-Bug golf cart here, and I hope your golfer will become one.
All right, try to play.
Thanks a lot. Congratulations, to you.
Harris staged the very first United Negro College Telethon. It has since become a national effort. Jack Harris serves on the board of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and has been with the Jerry Lewis Telethon since its national inception. He can be counted as a true broadcast genius because he hired me to work here 19 years ago next week. That's what's getting you in the Hall of Fame, Colonel. That one mistake is getting you in the Hall of Fame. Congratulations.
Well, congratulations to you. You made it for 19 years.
That shock you? You think I'd make it that long when you hired me the first time?
I figured about 40.
You figured, well, we still got some time to go. Yeah. I want to go back to MacArthur for a while,
right,
before we talk about television. Where were you when that famous scene took place? Were you on the battleship? Or?
I was on the battleship. I was behind his right shoulder on a gun turret. I had my crew up there, and we were recording the event for later broadcast. At that time, we had disc and wire recorders. There was no such thing as tape, which was discovered later that the Germans had developed.
Uh-huh. Originally, that was not supposed to take place on that battleship, was it? Didn't you get all the wires lined up for someplace else?
Yes, the original plan that MacArthur had for the surrender was to take place at the American Embassy. His idea was that we would be demonstrating to the Japanese that we were repossessing that piece of real estate from which we had been evicted.
Mm-hmm.
And it was President Truman who sent a message directing that it take place aboard the USS Missouri.
So how much time did you have to change your plans around?
About 48 hours.
So you had to get radio lines and everything on the ship?
Well, we didn't have any radio lines.
It didn't work that way then, huh?
It didn't work that way. What we had to do, and the general public never knew this, we had to record the event and take the recordings back to Yokohama, to the studio, and something like 40 minutes after the event had ended, we began to play the recording back to the States. And at that time, there was a requirement that you had to say the following is an electrical transcription.
Uh-huh.
And then when it was over, you had to say the preceding has been an electrical transcription. But I decided on my own that this was an historic event, and there was no way that we were going to encumber it with that kind of foolishness. So as far as the networks were concerned, the public was concerned.
It was a live event.
It was a live event, but they heard it about 40 minutes after it ended.
After the war's over, you're originally from Nashville, Tennessee, and you worked at WSM and the Grand Ole Opry and all. Did you sing on the Grand Ole Opry or announce on the Grand Ole Opry, any of that sort of thing?
No, I was...
You sure you didn't sing on the Grand Ole Opry now?
I didn't even announce on the Grand Ole Opry because I was the only person there that did any announcing that didn't announce on the Grand Ole Opry. And the reason I wouldn't go on was because I felt that I couldn't say howdy folks and make it sound very, very real.
You were a Bible salesman at one time in your career? I have to go through all of this so that folks will understand that we're dealing with a man of high substance here. You were a Bible salesman at one time, is that right?
We had Bibles in our line.
What else did you sell?
Well, we sold something called Safety Counsel, which today would be called a sex book.
You're kidding?
Yes.
At the same time you're selling Bibles and sex books?
That was in the line, and that was in between my high school graduation and when I went to college.
Oh, okay, all right. So now you know that we are dealing with a gentleman who not only knows about Bibles, but knows about sex and knows about broadcasting. We've established those three things. He also won the war. We just cleared that up.
Yeah.
When we come back, we're going to talk about what he did when television was brand new in Houston. Stay with us for Jack Harris.
The Ron Stone Show is brought to you in part by Southland Hardware.
I'm Arthur Voss, president of Southland Hardware. I'd like to invite you to visit the finest, most complete hardware store in Houston.
For those hard-to-find items, come to Southland Hardware at 1822 Westheimer. Southland has those things you can't find other places. Plus, Southland cuts lumber, threads, pipe, and helps you with problems in household repairs. If Southland Hardware doesn't have it, you don't need it. Visit Southland Hardware at 1822 Westheimer. Call 529-4743.
You'll be glad you did.
Texans have been getting dressed at Baskin's since 1972. And right now, Baskin's recipe for Christmas dressing calls for a generous portion of style with Don Kenny pull-on pants. Mix in Commuters by Connie from AAA through D-Wit, all available at Baskin's. And add comfort with the Reebok Comfort Ultra, the first walking shoe to feature the Energizer system by Reebok.
Drive a little, save a lot, helping you with everything we've got. Baskin's is your friendly family store.
Dashing for the plane, trying to make the flight. Come on! Mom and Dad just made a tiny oversight. As they hurry home, two robbers plan a heist. But little do they know, he's got his home turf iced. Home alone, trick them every way. Oh, what fun it is to see two burglars get Bombay. Home Alone.
Home Alone, the Christmas gift of the year. $24.98 or $5 less with Pepsi rebate. Rated PG.
Steve chose Houston Baptist University because of its high academic standards and flexibility it offers to working professionals. Kevin wants to attend a university where he has easy access to faculty members. Julie left her home state to study piano with a respected artist in residence. Although their reasons for attending HBU are different, their needs are the same: a quality education. Houston Baptist University. Strong in mind, strong in spirit.
My guest today is Colonel Jack Harris, who will be inducted into the Broadcast Hall of Fame in Washington in ceremonies tomorrow evening. Let me go back to 1947 when you came to Houston to do KPRC radio, and then television came along. Do you think television was a flash in the pan?
No, I really didn't. Television was sold to me really by General Sarnoff. When we attended a meeting in Atlantic City, he made a speech in which he said, if you're in radio or newspapers, you had better get into television because one day it's going to be bigger than both of them combined. When you figured that as an advertising medium and as an entertainment medium, that television not only had the sound of radio, the sight of magazines and newspapers, but it had action and ultimately color. It had four things combined that made it the most powerful advertising medium ever.
When you first went on the air, you could put, I say this, and I'm not sure this is right, you could put almost anything on television, people would watch it.
Yes, even the test pattern would get an audience. We were the only station in Houston for about 4.5 years. And there was no way of knowing which ones they liked the best because they watched everything, including the test pattern.
What kind of shows did you have in the beginning?
Terrible.
What were some of those terrible shows?
Oh, well, we had a piano player, and you would show his hands up close. We had some quiz shows that weren't very good, a lot of local shows. Because we were not interconnected as part of a national network until 1952.
The network just sort of flies through the air now. At that time, it was operating on a cable, and the cable was inching its way toward Houston.
Yes, they did have some microwave links, but it was nothing like today. And they had reached Dallas, but not Houston. And actually, in 1952, we were very eager to get on, and we were not due to get on, because the national political conventions were to take place in July and August. And Governor Hobby interceded with the president of AT&T. And because of his intervention, they took the original link, which had been between New York and Atlantic City, and they were not using it anymore, and they tore it down and brought it and built it from Dallas to Houston. So the first big event, live event ever seen in Houston was the 1952 Democratic Convention.
Okay, my memory of who broadcast that for NBC then, who do you remember who did that? That was before Huntley Brinkley, wasn't it?
Yes, that was before Huntley and Brinkley, and I don't remember because it was academic. At that time, we used 3 of the 4 networks. We alternated between them.
Oh, I see.
They would...
you had everybody.
The facilities were so limited that in markets that had less than 4 stations, which was almost everybody except New York and Chicago and Los Angeles,
yeah,
they alternated between. We would have Betty Furness selling refrigerators on CBS 1 brand, and the next hour we'd have somebody else selling a different refrigerator on another network.
Yeah.
So we'd have an hour from one network, and then the next hour would be another one.
You weren't on the air very long at that time. Were it just in the evening, or part of the afternoon and evening, or were you on all day, or what?
Well, by 1952, we had extended. When we first went on, we started at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and went off at 10.
Always have a local news program from the beginning, or not?
Yes, yes. We always did. We were one of the few stations in the country that had local news at 6 o'clock.
Was Ray Miller the original one?
No, Pat Flaherty.
Pat Flaherty, okay.
Pat Flaherty started it, and then Ray Miller became the news director. And
were you sort of inventing this as you went along? Didn't have any guidebook as to what you were supposed to do?
I visited some of the existing stations to find out what they were doing, but they didn't know what to do either, and they were inventing, and so we had to invent.
What happened when? I guess the second station that went on the air in Houston was KGUL out of Galveston that became KHOU, is that right?
No.
13 beat them?
No.
Who beat them?
39.
39?
39 was the second station in Houston.
Who was that? I mean,
that was...
Not this 39.
Well, it was a different ownership.
Okay, all right.
They had come on, and they lasted 6 or 8 months.
Okay.
And the problem was, at that time, to get a UHF station...
You had to have a special little...
You had to have a converter.
Yeah, yeah.
You had to buy a converter. And I think maybe one of the reasons I may be getting the honor tomorrow night is that I organized and headed up an organization called Maximum Service Television Stations. And we ramrodded through the Congress the all-channel legislation.
Uh-huh.
As a result of that, the UHF stations became competitive with the VHF stations. Now, we didn't do it just out of the goodness of our heart. We felt that if you only had 12 channels, that sooner or later they would have to find ways, and they would probably take those 12 channels about and move us into a higher part of the spectrum. But that legislation made the UHF stations viable without the purchase of a converter.
Converter box, yeah.
So they had gone off the air, but they were the first ones. And then the next station came on with KGUL.
We'll continue our discussion with Colonel Jack Harris in just a moment. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.